All right, welcome back, guys. So now we're moving on to chapter 3, and in this chapter we're gonna now talk about your other subconscious thoughts outside of emotion. So, title of the chapter is called Subconscious Transcendentalism, and I actually get that from a philosophy called American Transcendentalism. I might mention that at the end of the video a little bit. At least that's why I use this word, but yeah, I also use it throughout the root of the word throughout the chapter. So yeah, what the chapter is going to be a bit of a recap, and the reason why I want to do that is because I started off with emotions because emotions are very easy to tell. In other words, it's very easy to tell that emotions operate in a way that's very, very different from the way you express the normal thoughts that are native to your negative mind or the conscious mind, right? So it was very easy to kind of see that. And so it's very, they're a good, one of the good subconscious thoughts to use to talk about the difference between negative mind and positive mind. But the other subconscious thoughts that we're going to talk about, it's a little harder to kind of see that difference, right? So it's harder to tell where the negative mind ends and the positive mind begins with these actions. Once you get a little more experience, then it's pretty easy, right? But in the beginning, it might be a little bit tricky. So it's good to have a set of rules or a set of properties, right, that you can always appeal to kind of know when you're dealing with a ability that comes from the negative mind or the ability that comes from your positive mind. So just to get, and I want to, because we're basically going to be talking about this for the rest of the book, I find it easy to set up a new vocabulary. So we can start using a new vocabulary to start talking about thoughts that come from the negative mind and thoughts that come from the positive mind. So negative-minded thoughts are going to be called normal or non-transcendental mental abilities or actions. And abilities or actions that come from the positive mind are going to be called transcendental. So that's, like I said, that's the vocabulary we're going to pretty much be using throughout the rest of the book in the curriculum, just to make things easier to talk about. Now, again, this will be a bit of a recap, but because it's going to be a little trickier to identify actions coming from the positive mind and the negative mind, we basically want to rely on these principles. So every normal action or mental ability is always going to have these three principles or properties to it, these three descriptions about it. So any normal action could be performed anytime at will. It can be expressed in any way at will, and it can be performed as often as you want. So a good example of that is moving my arm. So I can move my arm anytime I want to, right? I could do this, I could do that, I could wait a couple seconds and then just do that. You know what I mean? I could do it, I can move it anytime at will. And I can express it in any way I want to. So I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that. I can do like that. So I can move my arm in any way that I feel like, any way my body physically allows me to. And there's no limit. Any limit in motion is not going to come from my conscious mind. And so it can be performed as often as you wish. So I can do it all day until my arm gets tired. So because moving my arm has these three properties, you can tell that's a normal action. That's coming from my negative mind. Now, transcendental abilities or transcendental actions can't be performed anytime at will, right? And we talked about that in chapter 1. Also, they'll always be quantized, or more specifically what I mean by this, a better way to look at it is any transcendental mental ability or action is always going to have a frequency component to it. So, again, that's kind of easy to tell for emotions because we just name the frequency by the emotion you're going to feel on that frequency. But it's going to be trickier for the other abilities. But it's important to remember for your other abilities, they always have a frequency component too. And they're quantized by the intention. We'll talk more about the relationship between the intention and the frequency or the expression of subconscious thought in chapter 7. But for the most part, for now, it's enough to just recognize that it always has a frequency component to it. And then the last property is every transcendental mental ability or action is also always going to have an energy component that charges and discharges. So For emotion, it's easy. When emotion has an energy component, when it charges, you just feel that emotion more. You feel it more strongly. When it discharges, you feel emotion less. So, now for the other subconscious expressions, subconscious thought expressions, it's going to have this same component too. So we're going to look at how each expression of subconscious thought changes as it gets more and more energy, and how it changes when it gets less and less energy. So that's going to be important. Now, clearly, we kind of already did it, but emotion follows these three principles very easily. So if you wanted to, for example, just feel whatever emotion, let's say you want to feel the emotion, you want to feel strong, right? Let's say you want to feel really strong. You can't just make yourself feel that emotion at will anytime you want to. In the same way you can move your arm. You can't snap your finger and just feel the emotional strength, right? Certain things have to happen, and then suddenly you find that you can feel it. Sometimes you can feel it really strongly, sometimes you feel it when you don't want to. And sometimes you don't feel it very strongly when you want to. In other words, you can't do it at will. Certain things have to happen where it's like the timing window opens and suddenly you can just feel it. And when they happen, it's because something caused you to produce the intention that made you feel strength, and then your subconscious switched the frequency and allowed you to feel the emotion of strength. But even if you do feel it, now the question is, how much do you feel it? So that's this property. If you feel it like crazy, then it had a lot of energy. And sometimes it'll last for a while. You just feel super strong. But over time, you may, for whatever reason, just feel less and less of it. That means it's discharging. So emotions follow these three properties easily, right? So, we'll get to this last point, but yeah, so you can see emotions follow these three properties easily, and then moving my arm as an example follows these three properties easily. So you can tell the emotions come from the positive mind, and moving my arm comes from the negative mind. In other words, it's normal action, and emotions are transcendental action, or mental ability. So we're going to pretty much use these same principles when talking about the rest of the types of subconscious thought expressions that you have. And then one last principle that's really a derivation of these principles, but it's useful to recognize, is that anytime you're performing a transcendental mental ability, you're generally going to feel some emotion very strongly when you're performing it. And the reason for that is because when your subconscious energy charges, it always expresses every subconscious mental ability that you have, or every subconscious thought is affected by that charge, not just one. So let's say I have 4 types of subconscious thought expression. So I have emotion and I have 3 more. It won't be the case that when I charge my subconscious, I have to focus that energy on one of the thought expressions, but then I can't use it for the others. That's not how it works. Anytime you charge subconscious energy, all of them are getting affected, and all of them are going to be expressed by the frequency that energy was charged up at. What you can still do though, and this is what I've noticed, you can charge your subconscious energy in a way that focuses a little more on one of the mental abilities. So one mental ability will be more it'll have a higher affinity of expression in your subconscious than the rest. But you can't, it's only it's a higher affinity, but you can't make it so that that energy is not affecting any of the other subconscious thought expressions. So when you charge your subconscious, your subconscious or your positive mind is always going to express every mental ability all at once, all the time, as long as you have that charge. It's just going to express one a little bit more, and that depends on how you charge it. So that's why this principle comes in. So because it's always expressing all of your transcendental abilities at once, that's going to include emotion. So you're always going to feel some emotion pretty strongly when you're expressing, or decently strongly. It depends on how much subconscious energy is charged. But you're always going to feel some emotion at a decent level of strength whenever you're using any transcendental mental ability. So that's going to be important too. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this part of the chapter. In the next section, in the book, I talk about an experience that I had when I was trying to practice to sing when I was younger. Yeah, I think I might go over that to make things it's a little easier when we talk about the first transcendental mental ability. All right, so yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.